I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a regular reoccurring guest. She's on at least 4 or 5 times a year. Her latest report, her annual wrap-up is the Solari Report. It's about pensions. But listen, even if you don't have a pension, this applies to you. And if you look at the cow, you see he's being milked. And then if you look at the cow, the spots are, there's the United States, there's Africa, there's Asian over here. We're being milked, we're being harvested. This is according to the founder of Solari.com and the Solari Report, Catherine Austin Fitts. Catherine Austin Fitts, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thanks, Greg. It's always a pleasure.
I want to start with the hacking of your website. You have, and I said, why did you get hacked? I mean, I know you're putting out information and telling the truth, so that's one reason why. But you said, I'll tell you why I got hacked. I got hacked because of this. And I put it out for free. So you can go to Solari, solari.pension.com. and get this entire report for free.
The pension fund presentation is at pension.solari.com. By the time you run this, our new website will be launched at solari.com. So you can go to solari.com or pension.solari.com.
To get this report, and it's you put it out because basically what this why people without pensions, why does this apply to people without pensions? Because pensions, go ahead.
The liability for federal and state and local pension funds that could come back and bite you, depending on where you are, is enormous. And
for everybody, whether you have one or not.
The bite for federal pension funds. So this is going to roll back and bite you one way or another. As a taxpayer, whether federal, state, or local. The other thing is, if your parents show up with their pension fund cut at your door and say, "Can we live with you?" What are you going to say? No, you can't come in. So you're talking about things that could cut incomes all over your network of friends and family in a way that will affect you. So this is going to affect you one way or the other, and that's one of the things we tried very much to document and explain in this report.
And you were hacked. Why do you say you were hacked? What does this report say that said that the deep state and the evil in this world doesn't want out for the general public? The narrative that the general public has been told. What does this say about it?
Well, we just spent 2 days putting back up all the documentation for the missing money, the $21 trillion missing from the federal government. The reality, Greg, is if you look at how the federal government has been working, I think it's in effect a laundry, which is our pension funds have real money. Those pension funds basically finance the government and what the government is doing. So they buy treasury securities. The government turns around and gives that money to the black budget firms, and it goes down the rabbit hole. And meantime, what we get back in our pension funds is an IOU from the federal government, which now we owe ourselves. So we're giving up real money, which is disappearing, and what we're getting is an IOU from ourselves back. I mean, if you step back and look at it at the highest level, it's a huge money laundering scheme.
You say we don't have a pension. I read this report. You gave me this version of the report. There's a much bigger one online. And you say it's the pension crisis is not a crisis. It's a plan. And you told me in the pre-interview you wanted to change the narrative. How should the narrative change? What are they telling us that's a lie, and what's the truth?
So they're saying there's a crisis because we've been profligate and we haven't saved enough. And in fact, if you go back and look at what's happening, and it's very different pension fund to pension fund, but if you look what's happening, the pension funds have been drained in a number of ways, including falling interest rates, and I think a lot of fraud. I tell the story of my personal experience in CalPERS and why I think what was going on in their real estate was very significant activity, which I would describe as outside the laws of, that fiduciary that apply to CalPERS. And maybe just, outright fraud, who knows? But one of the things I say is we need an investigation there. So if you look at these multiple kinds of drains, I think, performance of the pension funds, the U.S. performance is lower than any other major developed world country for the last 10 years. So I think there are real questions about the integrity of the governance structure and how our money is being managed. One of the things I point out is I think one of the reasons that the low performance is people have lost trust in the system. And so after the financial crisis, where our pension funds lost much more money than pension funds around the world, you see a lot of people, if my experience is representative, not trust the system, and so they won't invest back in. So I think another problem is legitimate distrust of the system. So, all these different reasons, which I document in this report, are contributing to a system which is not performing. Again, I tie it back to real integrity of governance. I describe that in detail in the report. And again, it's available to everybody. But what I say is this is not a crisis, it's a plan. Now, I bring it down to a bottom line, Greg, where I said, look, we gave the banks or lent them $24 trillion when we had no legal obligation to do that. There's $21 trillion missing from the federal government. I go through a whole lot of the other frauds. And I say at a minimum, what I call the financial coup d'etat was $50 trillion. But for some reason, $5 trillion of underfunding on pension funds that have $25 trillion of real assets is somehow a crisis. I don't think so. So if we can give or transfer $50 trillion, we can come up with $5 trillion for the pension funds. So the reality is we need to get the numbers. I finish off and I say to get, please stay calm and do the math. The math on the pension funds, when you compare it to the $21 trillion of missing money, that's our money that's missing. If you compare it to the $21 trillion of missing money, my attitude is you got a problem funding the pension funds, get $5 trillion of the $21 trillion back and fund the pension funds. So I'm trying to bring the pension funds into perspective with all the other system frauds that have been going on and put it in that context so you can see we don't have a crisis, we have a plan. And that plan is to use the pension funds to do a whole variety of things. The question is, where's all this money going? Where's the drain? What's the drain financing, which is a separate question. But to basically show we have a problem with the pension funds, but it's not the fact that we haven't been saving. There's a drain. I want to know where the money's going, and I want to see integrity returned to the governance system.
You're saying don't put any more milk in the bucket. You're saying we're being milked. You're saying there's a hole in the bucket.
Well, there's a hole in the bucket. People keep saying there's not enough milk in the bucket, and I'm saying there's a hole in the bucket. Of course there's not enough milk in the bucket. There's a hole in the bucket, and I'm not going to put another ounce of milk in the bucket until you plug the hole or we plug the hole. But, why would you put more milk in a bucket that has a hole in the bottom?
So, in other words, what the mass audience appeals with this is all these pensions are being used to cover up fraud. Massive.
I would say not all these pensions. So, to me, there's a very wide fact pattern on individual pensions of whether that pension is well run or not. So I think you have to be very careful to say all. But there's no doubt that all pension funds are being drained. So if the central banks do quantitative easing to base the currency and run interest rates down using derivatives, using the taxpayers' credit to do it, the problem is all pension funds are operating in that environment and they get drained by it, even though they're being managed with great integrity. You see that. And what I'm saying, one of the things I say in the study is, it's pension funds' business as the primary source of equity to a society to have a say about those policies and stop them. Why the pension funds haven't reared up and said, no, all this federal financial fraud is going to stop. We're not going to finance it. Why have they continued to finance it? That's a very big question mark.
We were talking about this in a pre-interview. I have a friend of mine that just doesn't believe in any stocks. He doesn't believe in buying any of them. I personally don't have any myself because I have to disclose it every time we go on the air. But he is right. In total tangibles. I don't trust the brokerages. I don't trust the system. I don't trust the dollar. I don't trust the government. I don't trust any of these guys. And yes, we've had 10 years where the market went up, but that was basically because of, they rigged LIBOR, they rigged the gold market, the silver market, they rigged the interest rate market, they have derivatives, they have fraud, they have unpunished crime, they have a massive amount of money printing, bond buying, quantitative easing, overt and covert. He doesn't trust anything. He doesn't trust the dollar. Right. I mean, so is he crazy?
So, no, he's not crazy. Now, what I would say is, the problem is we're in a system and there's a lot of good in the system and there's a lot of corruption in the system. And the challenge you have is how do you get the good without the bad? Because I will tell you, the secret to the success of the Anglo-American Alliance is financial liquidity. And that financial liquidity is really threatened by a fundamental corruption of the system, and people legitimately feeling the way your friend feels. If you look at the back of or one of the last pieces in the study, I go through my personal experience and why I do so much outside of the system and come at things in very unorthodox ways, because I'm very, very familiar with how fraudulent and dangerous the system is.
They tried.
So
Just so people know, they tried to kill you. They tried to bankrupt
right,
you. They just crashed your
right.
system down just in what week and a half ago. They just destroyed your system because you were telling the
Well,
truth.
it was funny because we've been working on a new website, and it's very frustrating to have half your team on a new website and half your team on an old website. And when they hacked it, it was really bad this time. And I tell everybody, I estimate, Greg, I spend about $100,000 a year dealing with these kinds of interference and headwinds. So, and I certainly learned how to do it during the litigation. And to me, it's just part of telling the truth in this world. But this time, when it was going to be so much effort to bring up the old site, I said, something? Forget it. Let's just stay down and bring up the new system. And I think you're going to love the new website. It's fabulous. And it's a pleasure to work on. It's much more professional. And it addresses a lot of the changes that people need in the subscription software. So I'm very, there, what the devil intends for your harm, God means it for your good. So I'm very, to me, it's going to be a blessing in disguise, because the whole team pulled together and did a fabulous job of bringing up the new site. So I'm excited about it. So thank you to whoever hacked me.
Well,
strange as it sounds.
but there is a lot. But that's a real. You were talking about the fraud in the system. Then there's a lot of good companies. Now you go through and find
Right.
great companies with great innovation, and they're using the markets for
Right.
whatever. But all this this can go terribly wrong. Even if you're a good company, there's a lot of brokerages that are at risk for all kinds of fraud and derivatives and all kinds of stuff. The whole system can come down.
This is going terribly wrong. And it's not that the whole system is coming down in a big bang. The whole system is coming down one tiny market share by another. I just got back from 2 wonderful weeks in the Netherlands and Switzerland. Greg, we are the laughing stock of the world. If you look at what the world sees and thinks of what's going on in Washington, they really believe that America is not under adult supervision. And if you look at what CNN and Robert Mueller are doing, and then, when Trump gets really temperamental and mouths off in a childish way about it, it really does look childish. And there's no way that the world is going to support and defend a reserve currency that's run by children. It's not going to happen.
On both sides, all sides. Of course, right. the mainstream media tells all kinds of complete and total lies. They're just propaganda. I used to work in their houses. What they're doing is totally against the stuff I did. They single source, anonymous sources, and then they lie to you about the anonymous sources.
The Chinese have a concept called the mandate of heaven. And we are losing the mandate of heaven, $1, one company, one person at a time. When I tell you, and the reality is all around the world, you have major adults going to build change, build the future. So you have major adults all over the world building the future, excited about the future, and looking at us and saying, how far can we get away from those people? And I don't blame them. It's very humiliating to be an American in Europe right now.
Well, the problem with that is we'd look great if Mitt Romney was in there, or we'd look great if one of the swamp creatures was in there, and they were all playing along and making out like we had this WWE fake fighting on both sides of the aisle. But we have somebody who wants to take these guys down.
I don't think so.
Donald Trump wants to take these guys down.
I don't think we would look great if we had Mitt Romney in here.
Well,
right now, America is choking on the lies of the red button. In other words, we have become so dependent on criminal enterprise and so dependent on lies that I think many people in the establishment have forgotten what the truth is. And the reality is the rest of the world has not necessarily forgotten what the truth is. I mean, I've always said that people who play in a rigged system get stupid, and our extraordinary ability to manage the financial markets and rig the lies, I mean, I think we're getting stupid on our own lies. So I think America, now, I don't underestimate the ability of the U.S. military and the Space Command to pull things out. So maybe high technology and force can pull it out, but you can't run an entire planet on physical force. That's not going to work, Greg. It's not the basis of financial liquidity.
Donald Trump, is he in trouble? He's got these executive orders at the end of ended last year about human trafficking and corruption. He's got a new,
Right.
I don't know if you call it executive order, a presidential memo or whatever on
So it's a
outlining
presidential action. Right.
on
So
outlining martial law, which is kind of
right.
bizarre.
So his executive order at the end of the year gave theoretically the military the ability to do tribunals domestically, and now he's issued a presidential action which changes the rules related to how those tribunals can be organized. And the question is, what's it going to be used for? How is it going to be used? You know, clearly purges are happening, and this looks like a major purge is on the way, but we don't know what it means yet. I will say this: it seems to me that Trump's position is stronger than it was, I think, the time that you and I talked. So I think his position is strengthening. And one of the reasons it's strengthening, if you look at the promises he's made, he's done quite an extraordinary job given the difficulties of delivering on many of those promises. His challenge is the way he talks and the way he communicates is not presidential. And the people who love him for those policies are really relatively distressed about the manner in which he communicates. You know, he's communicating like an entrepreneur and a TV star, not like a president. And I think his own base would like him to be a lot more presidential. It certainly doesn't help globally. It gets back to the childish thing. Not that he's the child in the room. There are much bigger children in the room, but it contributes to it. So I think the question is coming into the 2018 election, how's he going to do in the election? You need the Republicans to pull together. There's been a lot of grassroots efforts by young people, you know, sort of the Bernie Sanders folks, to get active at the local level. And I think this is all going to come down to, or how he's going to do depends on how the Republicans do in the 2018 election. Of course, how the economy does. The economy, now that he's engineered the tax reform and the repatriation of cash, the economy should be relatively strong in the military and corporate sectors. Of course, what you've got the true CPI significantly outrunning the growth in, you know, wage income. So the middle class still getting squeezed.
Do you think he's going to have to? Do you think he's going to have to? He's setting up a big, the Empire Strikes Back, the Trump Empire Strikes Back. Do you think the cabal of the Bushes and Clintons? Do you think they're worried? Because I think they've been awful.
From what I see, people are extremely worried, but part of it is because once purges start politically, they can go anywhere. So I think you have a generation that's being cleaned out because now that the financial coup is over, you don't need them anymore, and they're a liability. And I don't think that's Trump versus anybody else. I think you just got, purges underway because we're going from, one phase to the next phase. I think we have to see how this comes down because I'm not yet convinced that the good guys are going to come out. I'm not yet convinced that this is good guys against bad guys. There's plenty of factionalism going on. We're just going to have to see the way it goes down. So is it going to be U.S. military that controls how this happens, which means it'll probably come out reasonably well? Is it going to be foreign military that controls? Then not so good.
Do you think the foreign military could come in and try to take us over?
No, but I think you have foreign intelligence services which have had way too much influence and freedom to operate in the United States, as part of their syndicate relationship with people like the Bushes and the Clintons.
Yes, thank you.
And
thank you, President Obama and President Bush, and thank you, Hillary Clinton, for all your treason.
Right. So I think there's plenty of treason going on. It's not clear to me. Those networks are still very, very powerful. So it's not clear to me it's over. Anyway, when you have purges, things can go in many different ways. And of course, what I would like to see is decentralization. So if one faction who's centralizing beats another faction that's centralizing, it doesn't necessarily leave anything better.
Do you think Trump's trying
Greg, let me just bring up one thing. The big issue here underneath the carpet is there an effort to clean out the pedophilia? Because there's no doubt that one of the greatest sources of corruption in this country is the control file system operated with the help of pornography and pedophilia. And if you look at the networks that have been building that, as I told you in the pre-interview, my big concern is that they take out the victims of those stings as opposed to the people who are, the predators who are leading and doing the stings. And frankly, that, I'm gonna jump some dots without being able to connect them in the court of law. My guess is that takes us right back into Hollywood.
Really?
Yeah. So who makes films?
Yeah. They're worried too. They're worried. They're worried about that.
I have severe questions about what the telcos and the media have been up to vis-a-vis pornography and pedophilia, and how that relates to the control file network in this country. And that's what has to come out, and we have to bring transparency. And so what I want to see in these purges is, are we going to clean out the real predators here, or are we just going to clean out the victims?
Leaving the real predators.
Right.
How do you think 2018 is going to go? I mean, what's your most probable scenario of 2018? It looks like, and this is going to be bizarre for me to say this, it looks like 2018 is going to be a pretty stable year, that they're going to be able to stabilize with the tax cuts and the repatriation, as you were talking about, that they're going to go.
I think there is tremendous, I call it Fortress America. I think they're trying to move a lot of the supply lines back to the United States, and a lot of this cash and repatriation of money is going to be relatively good for the economy, given many of the other things going on. They're trying to develop more resiliency and self-sufficiency within North America. And I have to tell you, small business and the heartland is so heartened by the Trump victory and many of his early actions. So, it comes back to policies as opposed to what he tweets out. I think small business and people in the heartland feel very, very relieved compared to what would have happened if Clinton won. And that's not to be underestimated, because the reality is, Greg, on planet Earth, 7 billion people get up every morning and they get paid to make things work, not to have things fall apart. And that's a very mighty force. Now, the other thing I feel very good about 2018 is I think the 5 to 10% of the population who's worried about what's going on, who wants to know the truth, who takes responsibility, you and I are in that 5 to 10%. I think they're mad. I think they've had it in a positive way. And I think Trump's talking turkey has given them an opening to talk about reality and the truth. And, so my prediction is your business and my business is going to have a good year, because people want the truth, but they want actionable intelligence. They want to know, what can I do? How do I do it? And that's why we did the pension fund study, because if we're going to stop the corruption, you have to cut off our money being used to finance the corruption. So you and I have got to make sure our money isn't financing the thing that's killing us. And that's what's going on. And that's why, whether it was the 21 trillion or the pension funds, I focused last year on getting to people the actionable intelligence they need to make sure their money is protected, number one, and they're not financing the guys trying to kill them.
Do you think that Donald Trump in this executive order, it was the one on, I just have it here because I use it all the time. It is the executive order that blocks the property rights of persons, human rights, or corruption. This is December 21st. He called this a national emergency, this executive order. It's on whitehouse.gov. It's real. And
the list, I don't know if you know this, the listed treasury of people subject to that order is now over 1,000 pages long.
It's stunning. It started out with
Right.
13, but it wasn't just 13 people. But it's yeah, it's long, and he's going to confiscate property. That's why Mnuchin's involved. That's why the Treasury's involved.
Right.
He called it a national emergency, and he was worried about them taking down the financial system in that executive order. That's the president. It's whitehouse.gov, on whitehouse.gov. Do you think they could make a play to try to take down the financial system and disrupt Trump and what he's doing to take these guys down?
Not if he, I'm not saying people couldn't try, but if he has the military behind him, which I think he does, I think that's how he got elected, I think he's fine. Now, I'm not underestimating the complexity of the task, but no, I don't. Remember, Mnuchin is skull and bones. Let's talk about who the Secretary of the Treasury is. He's Goldman Sachs and skull and bones.
Yeah, that's Yale, right? Yale, skull and bones.
Yeah.
Well, he's got to have.
So he's not naive.
He's not naive. He's going to have real players come in and help him with a real enemy. I mean, is he not?
Well, here's what's interesting. I told you at the beginning of the year, if you look at the team from Goldman Sachs who we brought into the administration, they're the people who globalized the money during the financial coup d'etat in the 90s.
To take it out.
Including the rape of Russia. So, this is a round trip. They're the ones who sent the money abroad, and they're the ones who are engineering the return of money. And if you look at who ought to engineer the return of money, it's the people who, sent it out, right?
That's right.
It's a round trip.
And so
it's a Goldman Sachs round trip.
So in this case, Goldman Sachs may not be the evil player that it was when it was evacuating the money out of the country. They're actually saying, we don't want this to go away.
I used to work at Goldman Sachs, and right now I have nothing nice to say about Goldman Sachs. Nothing. Okay? But the reality is, if you look at how they globalized, they engineered the financial coup d'etat. So if you want to rebuild and pull the supply lines back, they know how to do it. They're perfectly competent. If you look at how they engineered the financial coup, as a financial engineering feat, it was extraordinary. They did an extraordinary job, which is why I suspect that's how Lloyd Blankfein got from the gold desk all the way up to running fixed income and then running the firm with Gary Cohn behind him. But the reality is they know how the financial system works on the covert side because they engineered the financial coup d'etat. So they know how to do it. Now, the reality is you move that money out of the country in a way that busted the unions. Now you can bring it all back and do the operations with robotics and AI in this country in a much tighter position of control and with different people having the equity positions. So you shift who and where the wealth has. But the reality is they know how to do it. And remember, these were the folks that engineered the rape of Russia.
And in this case, this is actually a good thing to have manufacturing, even though it's less jobs than what it was on the way out, and it's more robotics and more high tech. This would be a good thing for America.
Yes, this will be a good thing for the American economy. There's no doubt about it. So I wrote an article on the Trump campaign, on the Trump victory right after the election called the Productivity Backlash. And I basically said, look, you had a fight between, it's rare that we have a presidential campaign where real policy issues are really debated and decided. But, we had a group of people who are willing to strip America to keep the unipolar model going. And the people who won basically said, no, we're going to rebuild North America. We're going to make sure our base is strong. Now, if you look at what Trump has done with the budget, Greg, he's trying to do both. He's trying to keep the unipolar model going, but he's trying to rebuild America. And the question is, how long does he think he can keep the unipolar model going? It's a military question, and it depends on intelligence, which I don't have access to, particularly related to, primacy and space weaponry. And that's why this latest speech by Putin was so at the heart of the matter and important. And that's why the debate about Russia is so important, because it really threatens the timing of how long we can keep the unipolar model going. But Trump's faction was the one that wanted to rebuild the heartland of America. And in many respects, I don't like necessarily some of the ways they're doing it. They're going about it very aggressively, but there's no doubt it will be good for the U.S. GNP.
Putin, now you brought that up. I just thought, why would Putin say this? This is for public consumption. We know what he has. We know they have hypersonic missiles and submarines and missiles that go 200 miles an hour under the water and whatever. And nuclear torpedoes, whatever he's got. We know all that. Why did he make that public statement that he was going to, basically destroy America with these hypersonic missiles?
Because I think, well, what he put forward was a defense strategy, not an offense strategy. But I think Putin and the Russians are extremely concerned that America is going to try and come up with a first strike capability. In other words, that America believes that they can so surround them with missiles that they can get away with a first nuclear strike. And it's not that they're planning on doing a first nuclear strike. It's that they're planning on using that capability to force Russia into a dollar unipolar world, which Russia doesn't want. They want sovereignty. So what you're looking at ultimately is a military question that translates into financial and economic, sovereignty or not. But I think they're trying to prevent the U.S. from having a first strike capability against Russia. As one military analyst said right after the speech, he said, well, America just lost the Russia military option. And that's the debate. Is that true or not? And I think Putin has been working since 2010, and certainly from the first time the sanctions went on, to do everything they could technologically and to make sure their weaponry could prevent a first strike option.
So you don't see war as a card here. Putin just basically took that off the table, saying, if you do this, you're gonna die, you're gonna suffer.
Well, I think Putin was trying to take the first strike option off the table. That's what I think he was trying to do. And
do you think he did
and
it?
if you look, I don't know enough about the way. So the question is Putin bluffing or not?
Oh, no.
Now, if you look at his history, it's not his nature to bluff.
That's right.
So I would say 80% chance he delivered a very sobering message to the U.S. military. Now, the question goes back to the black budget. We've been building and transferring amazing black budget technology to private corporations for decades now. And the question is, what is the space weaponry capability that we have? And I don't know the answer to that. But I think that's the biggest question here. There's no doubt, if you look at the money, Greg, that the Chinese and the Russians are pouring into high-tech military capability. The United States has started a space and arms war which could bankrupt us all.
So a lot of this money, a chunk of this 21 trillion, that's what we know of, there's more probably, has gone into the not so secret space program. Paul Hellyer talked about this, that they're spending a lot of money.
So I believe I believe a great deal of the money that's been disappearing has been going into the black budget and the secret space program and all these underground base, all these different things, the covert side of life. The black budget it's amazing, Greg, how wealthy we are considering how much has been drained off. It's incredible.
Well, that's a heck of a statement. Do you think there's technology, a cutting edge technology, alien technology, whatever you want to call it, that's out there that they could release that could fix a lot of problems in terms of America's indebtedness?
Absolutely. Our society operates on very old, very legacy technology. I mean, one of the things that most frustrates me when people start going yada, yada, yada about climate change is, wait a minute, since Tesla, it has been a political choice to use fossil fuels. If fossil fuels are so damaging, why are we using them? We don't need to use them. Do you think, if you've ever watched the UFOs, do you think they're operating on, do you think they're checking into Shell and getting gas? I don't think so. So, breakthrough energy technology has existed for almost 100 years. Why are we using legacy technology?
That's a very good question. And I think half the UFOs are ours anyway.
You know how I always say it doesn't have to collapse at all? The number one component of any corporate expense is energy and household expense. Energy. It's not labor, it's energy. We have the technology, and it's happening now with solar and some of the renewable energies. You bring that energy price way, way down, and do you have any idea the explosive wealth that could occur? I've said many times, I think the current financial wealth is 1% of what's possible if we find a way to integrate that technology. The problem right now is if you look at how they're planning on integrating that technology, their plan is very inhuman. I don't know. Did you see Tucker Carlson's rant on Facebook and Sean Parker?
No. What do you say?
Sean Parker, former president of Facebook, was bragging about how he had become a billionaire getting children addicted, and that they knew they were addicted to children. No, it gets even better. And then Parker brags about the fact that because he's a billionaire, he can afford the technology that will help him live to 160, while all the kids he addicted will be dying young. So we're talking about applying technology in a way which is inhuman. And the number one question before us is, are we going to be a human civilization, or a few people going to take this technology and use it to control and harvest everybody else? Because right now, if you look at the top, I'll never forget, I was at a conference on cryptocurrency last year, and I was talking with one of the venture capitalists, and he just looked at me and he said, look, we're going to take this technology and we're going to engineer out every job in America. Every job in America can be done by software and algorithms, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And you're looking into the eyes of somebody who's brilliant, but he's nuts.
Yes. And with that,
right.
We just skimmed the surface of this, the Solari Report. It's just really very well done. I mean, this is just the version she sent me, which is a cut down version. It's online for free, folks. She believes in it so much that you should know about it, how we're being harvested and pension money is being used to fund things that will destroy us. Catherine Austin Fitts, the Solari Report. She has great interviews, guests, stuff behind the paywall. She also has free stuff on Solari.com for you to consume as well. But it's just a well worth, and I don't get paid anything for saying this, but it's a well worth website. You put a lot of work into it. You travel the world. You give advice to people as an investment advisor to big money. You're connected, and I really like you. So thank you for coming on.
Connected. I know you.
Do what? I'm a simpleton.
I said, I know you. I know Greg Hunter.
Yeah, well, I'm a simpleton. I'm not as smart as you. But anyway, listen, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com. Very interesting, very compelling conversation. Catherine Austin Fitts, the publisher of the Solari Report. You can get this one for free. And where is it again? At pensions.solari.com?
Pension.solari.com, but if you just go to solari.com, we'll have a link up there for you.
Okay, that's fantastic. Catherine Austin Fitts, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thanks, Greg. Have a great day.